Thanks for joining, those of you who have joined. This is our first, hopefully several Concord Couch Classrooms. This is on videography for musicians, something we've all struggled with trying to learn over the last year to be able to continue to play music in this new, unique world. And Simone is, for those of you that don't know, she's the editor for Concord Couch Concerts. That does not mean she's necessarily responsible for the content that you've seen on there, but it means that she's entirely responsible for it all coming together into something that you can watch tastefully. And she is going to offer us tips for ways to improve what we can do as people that are trying to make videos that basically don't entirely know what we're doing. Everyone learned a little bit, but now we get to hear from a pro. And without further ado, here is Simone.
Hello. Hi, everyone. So my name is Simone. I got involved with Concord Couch Concerts on episode 2. And yes, so I'm not the one who makes the videos for the musicians necessarily. I'm the one who kind of assembles all of them together into a singular show. So I have a long background in film and television and radio. And I just thought I would share with you guys some tips, because I know that with the pandemic, a lot of you guys are, there's no gigs. That's taken away a big chunk of the performing aspect of being a musician, and it's moved it online. So folks are now cutting videos or they're live streaming so that they can share, their music with their audiences. So this is going to be kind of a crash course with a bunch of film school crammed into about half an hour, 45 minutes. This is all just kind of foundational stuff. So, it will lay a basis to make your videos just a little bit better. And who knows, maybe in the future we can get into some more advanced stuff. So let's start. There we go. So yeah, being partners with Javier Guerrero, I know that you musicians, you know your music, but it's the video part that is starting to trip up folks, because it's kind of been, hard learning curve, real crash course in trying to put the thing that you usually do live onto a video format. So today we're going to cover preparing for a shoot, setting up your camera, and optimizing audio recording. Now we're going to mostly focus on the preparation and the camera, because again, I know that you know audio, so I'm just going to kind of go over the stuff where audio intersects with video. And of course, just the common disclaimer that with any creative, endeavor, like video, like music, these guidelines are made to be broken. Like maybe you want it to be crazy dark in your video for a reason, but if it's not looking the way you want it to look, go back to these, foundations and see if you can, firm them up before deciding to break the rules later. So know them so that you could break them. Okay. So preparing for your shoot. The first thing is your set, which is probably going to be your living room, your garage, whatever you have available to you. There's a reason why Concord Couch Concerts has got the couch in it. So when you are putting together your set, you've got to consider a bunch of different elements that you might not have to consider if you're performing live or, just recording audio only. So the first thing is the literal space. Where are you recording? Are you recording indoors or are you recording outdoors? Outdoors can be fun, but it also presents its own sets of challenges because of changes in light and difficulty with sound. However, you have to consider things like the amount of space that you have. What if you have a really, really, really big band, your Arcade Fire or whatever? It's going to be hard to cram everybody into a small room and then fit everybody on camera. So you kind of have to balance being able to fit everybody comfortably and, in this day and age, safely, and whether or not you can get the camera into a position where you can actually capture everybody. So, maybe you have a really small room, but that means the camera can only go so far back and you just can't get everyone into the frame. These are things you really need to think about ahead of time. And then finally, what does a space actually look like? Like, what is it saying? You can just shoot in your living room and it's completely cool, or you could take the extra effort to put up some sort of set, backdrop, set some mood. Now, the other thing to consider is sound. Now, I'm not just talking about your music sound, I'm talking about the sound that might end up on the video. So you have to sit there and think, what are other sources of noise that could be coming into this room? Is there a smoke detector that's beeping? A fan, a sound like kind of an electrical sound. Can you control that? Can you go and turn everything off? So go around, look to see if there's any kind of sources of hidden sound that might leak into your video. And then also considering the set, you have to think about the acoustics of the room. Is the sound absorbed or is it echoed? It's always better to have like a carpeted space with curtains as opposed to something with, hardwood floors and a bare wall. Now, again, I know that most of you already know this, but when you're making a video, it's something you still have to consider, not just when you're recording audio. Now, finally, is one of the most important things is light. Is there enough light? You need light. I know you might want to set a mood or, have a dark atmosphere, but you still need to be seen on camera. So, is there enough light? Can you bring in more light? Can you control the light that's in the room? So you think about what are the light sources? Are you going to use lamps that you've brought in from other parts of the house? Have you bought lamps, professional lighting equipment? Or, are you relying on like a window and the sun? Now, something like that can be difficult because that's going to change over time. So if you take more than, depending on the time of year, time of day, you take more than half an hour, your lighting situation could be completely different by the time that you're done. And finally, shadows. So, you want to make sure that shadows aren't falling across your face or falling across anything that might be important in your video. A lot of light situations can be fixed or touched up in post-production, but if you've got a big thing across your face, you can't really take that out, and it's very distracting. Okay, so now here's the big part, lighting. There we go. So lighting is the most important part of any kind of photography. You're always going to need more light than you think. Like I said, even if you're trying to go for a dark atmosphere, you still need to have light. And if you're going to take this seriously, I would encourage you to purchase, some professional or prosumer level lighting. And it doesn't have to be that expensive. They make ring lights really, really cheap now. This setup here is a 3-light softbox setup that I've personally been eyeing but haven't bought yet. But, even if you're not going to expend any money, just think about what kind of lights you have in your house and can they be used. Okay, so being musicians who perform at night or in clubs or, in just a studio, you're more likely to encounter low light situations than you are with situations where there's too much light. That being said, cameras with smaller sensors tend to not perform as well in low light situations. Now, the size of the sensor is what, takes in the light. And so smaller sensor means more trouble taking in light, and camera phones have especially small sensors. So if you can, err on the side of having more light than you think that you need. Okay, so here's some film school shit. This is a 3-point lighting setup. This is what's going to make you the most clearly visible and defined in the shot. So 3 lights, 3-light setting. The first one is the key light, and you could see it on the diagram there in the lower right. This is your primary light. This is what's going to be lighting the bulk of your face. This is what's going to be the brightest. So you do want it be kind of centered or slightly off to the side, but the idea is to really kind of light your face. Now, of course, if you only have one light, that means you're going to have shadows. That's where the fill light comes in. This is slightly off to the opposite side, and it's going to be a little bit softer because we don't want you to be completely washed out like I am now on Zoom, because I am just far too pale for this situation. The fill light is going to softly fill in those shadows and make your features a little bit more defined. Now, those are the two most important lights, but if you really want to, do things right, you also want a backlight. Now, this is a light that's going to be behind you and slightly below you, and it's going to help you stand out from your background. Like if it's lighting the back here, like you'll see a little bit more of a halo on the hair that makes you stand out from what's behind you. Okay. Now, you don't necessarily need to know all these technical terms, but just quickly, the warmth or coolness of a light is called temperature. There's warmer lights, there's cooler lights. You can see on the chart here that something like a candle or fire is very, very warm, very orange, but something like natural light outside is very, very blue. And if you want to, make your skin tone look nice, if you want to color correct later, you're going to want to pay attention to this. And one of the things to remember is to try not to mix light. So if you have an incandescent lamp over here and a fluorescent lamp over here, it's going to get real muddled and muddy, and it's going to be hard to fix later. So if you can, even if you're just bringing in lamps from other parts of your house, try and make them the same light bulb. Like that's pretty cheap. Just go to Target, get the same light bulb, put them in all your lamps, and you should be pretty good. I mentioned this a little bit before, but shadows. So you can see on the left, it's a very deliberate use of shadows, very, film noir and Maltese Falcony. The one on the right is a mess. So again, when you're setting things up, always do a double check to make sure that, your light's there's not something in front of your light that's casting a shadow on your face. And if you can't move things, if you can't move the lights, if you can't move the stuff in your room, move yourself, and just a fun little thing for, you can see here on the left that the light shadows are caused by the blinds. On a movie set, they have this thing that they put in front of lights that has all these different cutouts in it, and it's called a cucaloris, or a cookie. So if you see like funny, light patterns, like maybe it looks like leaves filtering through trees, or it's like blinds, that's coming from a cookie. I just thought this cute. Okay. Safety. Now, hopefully this does not become an issue for folks, but better safe than sorry. So the first thing is electricity. Now, unless you're like truly bringing in like pro level lights and pro cameras and huge amps, it's probably not going to be too big of a deal, but be cautious. You're going to have a lot of stuff, even if they're not like high level items. You're going to have lights, you're going to have your instruments, computers, amps, chargers. Like just try not to blow a fuse. A little bit more common are trip hazards. Even if you're just pulling in lamps from other sides of other parts of the house, you're going to have cords crisscrossing your set. And, it would really suck if you tripped and fell and hurt yourself or embarrass yourself on camera, but you could also trip and fall and take down your entire lighting set with you, and that's going to be a real mess. And finally, lights, especially like the higher level lights, they get very, very hot after being on for a long time. You'll see a lot of lighting people on sets. They'll have like thick leather gloves to take care of this. So, if you're done for the day, you're trying to break down your set, just be careful and check before you just grab anything so you don't have a nasty surprise. Okay, so now we've come to the camera. And first things first is you want to keep your camera still and steady unless you deliberately decide to move it. So we don't want any accidental bumps, we don't want shaking, and we also don't want autofocus. Now, this is pretty predominant on phone cameras. It'll try and be on autofocus, which means it's trying to follow what's dominant in the frame. And so if you're moving, it's going to try and follow you, and it's going to have that kind of whooshy in and out zooming feel that can make you feel a little bit dizzy. So go ahead, turn it off. Set the focus for where you know you're going to be. And this is, I know a lot of people are recording themselves, but if you can get a friend, it's so incredibly helpful just to kind of keep an eye on things. Even if they're not in charge of anything, they can still watch the frame while you're filming. And so to that end, go ahead and invest in a tripod. Now you can get a tripod for any kind of camera and a phone camera. So the one here is a kind of a gorilla style camera that you can totally adjust. And as a matter of fact, I'm using one right now for my phone for my notes. So super helpful. You can kind of set it up anywhere from like a tree branch or, a bookshelf or something. So yeah, if you can, just these extra steps will really help steady your picture, which will just make it more watchable. Okay, so color. It seems like it should just be kind of an afterthought. It doesn't seem that important on the face of things, but we don't want any more orange men in any context. So let's figure out how to make the color of your skin and your background very, very nice and natural, and we can move on with our lives. The first thing is white balancing. So this is when you're telling your camera, hey, this should be white. This thing here, this is what white is. This is the definition of white. You use this now. A lot of cameras will allow you to do this in camera. So just read your manual and follow the directions. Or you can, take in a couple extra steps so that you can do it in post. So whether you're doing it in camera or you're going to do it in editing, you're going to need something that's bright, pure white that you can use. A piece of paper, a t-shirt, those things, as long as it's really, really white, can be used. So if it's like a piece of paper or you have like an actual card, like a designated, white balancing card, the thing you want to do is hold it up like kind of under your chin if you can and have it catch the light the way that your face would, because again, we want your face to be the thing that's the clearest. So you try and mimic what the light is doing to your face on the white balancing card. And apparently you could use my hands as a white balancing card. If you're going to go ahead and do it in post, make sure you record a couple of seconds so that you could pull that clip into your video editor and use that as the white balance. And here in the image, so not only is the photographer with this kid using the white balance card, but a lot of other cards will have what's called 18% gray and black. So not only can you tell your computer, mostly computer, not only can you tell your computer this is white, but then you could also say, hey, this is gray and this is black, and it really balances out all the levels. Okay, so framing and composition is when you do this thing. When you're trying to be like an old-timey director and look at how your shot's going to look. Aspect ratio is the description of the measurements of the frame. You can see here that, I'm sure old people like us, I'm watching Perfect Strangers on Hulu right now, and I keep, being amused at how it's in a 4:3. So there's these black bars on the sides because TV used to be in that much more boxy aspect ratio. Nowadays, we're mostly in 16:9, which is, HD TV, widescreen, and phones kind of go into a lot of different aspect ratios that you can just sort of pick and choose. Now for phones, it kind of sucks that a lot of different platforms have different aspect ratios. You know, if you're looking at YouTube, the widescreen, when you turn your phone sideways, that's going to be landscape or 16:9. But, you know, I'm sure you're familiar that Instagram is really primarily square. Or if you're doing like a Snapchat or Instagram Live, those might be, you know, horizontal or vertical, you know, portrait mode. So you just want to kind of consider, where is my video going to be, you know, posted? How can I optimize it for each of these different platforms? And, you know, do I want to prioritize some platforms over another? Do I want to kind of allot space around me? Like if I'm shooting in, you know, landscape, do I want to leave extra space to the side of me because I know I'm gonna have to trim it for Instagram or, you know, TikTok or whatever. Not that I know how to use TikTok yet. Particularly for Concord Couch concerts, our resolution is 1280 by 720. That's what Facebook will allow for streaming, so that's what we're kind of defaulting to. So go with that. Or if you want to kind of make it a bigger, you know, 1080 instead, that's fine. But we do have to downgrade it just for file size sake and for streaming sake. So, you know, it's not a bad idea to try and shoot something in a better resolution and then downgrade it for the platform. But, you know, it's going to end up in 720 anyway. Okay, so apologies for using a diagram of a very, very depressing show. This is from The Handmaid's Tale. But the point is that you usually want to get in really, really close. We want to see as much of you and your face and as much detail as possible. So the diagram here has the language that's used to describe different closeness of shots. You know, you've got a wide shot that's really, really far back, that takes in all the landscape, that gives you an idea of the setting. Pushing into something like a medium shot. I mean, me, myself right now is kind of in a medium, almost to a medium close-up, depends on how far I lean in. And then something like a close-up is just the face, and an extreme close-up is, you know, very, very tight in on like a particular feature. And so human beings like to look at other human beings. Unless you're explicitly shooting a, you know, an instructional video where you have to show the detail of like what your hands are doing, default back to showing the person instead. It can be tempting to just like focus in on just their face or just their hands, but you know, it depends on what your capabilities are. Like if you only have one camera, default back to something more like a medium wide, so that you can kind of take in a nice balance of detail with getting a larger sense of the scene. So you could see this wide shot or medium wide shot of this band up at the front, and you could see their faces and you could see their instruments and you can kind of really get a sense of the performance. But if you want to take it the next step, you can mix it up with those closer shots. If you have another person who's shooting on a different camera, or if you just have someone who's manning your camera and is really good at like kind of getting in and getting out, that's when you can vary it with close-ups of, you know, people's faces as they sing or people's hands as they're playing their instruments. But you don't want your whole video to be in close-up. Okay, so headroom is the idea of having literally room around your head. And because I'm a little bit cut off in Zoom, I can't see if I have proper headroom or not. So let's just look at this very pleasant looking bald guy. The first picture has too much headroom. He's too far down in the frame. There's too much empty space all around him. You know, you can definitely get in tighter. Now, the second picture, the middle picture, he doesn't have enough headroom. His head is like just touching the top of the frame. Now, all else being equal, like you want to have this, you know, nicely framed from the get-go, but if you have to kind of leave yourself some room, default to too much because then you could always take it out in post. If you don't leave enough headroom, it's not something that you could just put back in, you know? So the third picture here, you know, he's nicely framed. You can see his face. He's got a little bit of room all around him, but not too much. And he feels like the size feels appropriate. Like he's not like right up in your face and he's not too far away. Now, a lot of Concord Couch Concerts videos have split screens in them. That's because, you know, we're all working in our own homes. We can't gather all together. So we have to kind of splice and dice and put everyone into the frame together, Brady Bunch style. If you know that you're going to be doing that, go ahead and leave yourself some extra room. So you'll see this fabulous band here in our pictures. And we've got our guitarist, Sam. He is shooting in his very, very cute baby nursery of all places. But he left himself a lot of extra room. So when you see that when I edited it into a split screen, I still see his entire body. I see his instrument, and I still have plenty of room to fit the rest of the band members in there. Now, I would have left a little bit more room in the head space, you know, on the top of his head, but still, this is very, very good framing for this usage. And we'll get into this in the next slide, but even the frame where he's by himself still looks pretty good. So this is the rule of thirds. This is when you have imaginary lines going across your frame and dividing it into chunks. So there's going to be 2 lines horizontally and 2 lines vertically, sectioning off in thirds for a total of like 9 squares. Now, there's like, you could go into this for forever about the rule of thirds and the golden ratio and blah, blah, blah. But the takeaway is that, you know, centering is good, but the rule of thirds is slightly better. It's slightly more interesting. Everything being perfectly centered can be a little bit boring, unless you're like Wes Anderson or something. So going to the rule of thirds is slightly more visually interesting. I mean, as you can see here, we've got this really, really cute dog, and they've got, you know, all this extra space to the dog's left that kind of gives you the scope of, you know, all the land that he's overlooking. So it's a little bit more interesting than if he'd been perfectly centered. I'm going to go back a couple slides here. So look at the correct headroom guy. You might notice that his eyes are exactly on one of those 2/3 lines. Now, when we're looking at a person, the thing we see the most is their face. And when we look at a person's face, the thing we see the most is their eyes. So this is very, very good framing because his eyes are at exactly, you know, 1/3 of the frame. And looking at Sam here, again, he could have perfectly centered himself, but he's actually exactly on the 1/3 vertical line on the left there. Okay, so this is getting a little bit more into the length of the clips that you are filming, a little bit less of the actual camera setup. So you want to leave more room at the beginning and the end of your clips, like more time, more footage. This is because in the editing process, you need to have the ability to trim the front and the end, especially if you're going to be doing any kind of transitions, you know, fades to black or cross dissolves to the next scene. A lot of video editing programs require there to be a literal overlap of footage so that it can, you know, have a nice smooth transition from one clip to the next. If you just turn the camera on and start performing or speaking right away, it's very, very abrupt. So, you know, the editor might have to nitpick a little bit and try and make it a little bit more smooth. Otherwise, it's just, you know, black, black, black. Hey, let's start. No, we kind of want to let ourselves have a little extra space. And this is especially important if you're going to be filming yourself. Now, if you are the one like actually pushing the button to turn the camera on to record, you know, you're going to be all up in the camera. You're going to go like this, and you're going to go like this, and you're going to push the record button, and then you need to get back into place. That's when you still need to leave a little bit of extra room before you start your performance. Audio. Now, this is going to be a lot of the stuff that I know you guys already know, but this is how it relates to video production. So, you know, camera microphones are not great, especially, even a nice DSLR might have a beautiful, beautiful picture, but the built-in microphone is probably pretty shitty. And, even camera or phone microphones aren't the greatest. So if you can, having a dedicated recorder will really up the audio quality. And if you are playing an instrument, an electric instrument, something that can be plugged into your interface and computer, well, that will give you an even cleaner sound. Now, of course, if you want to make it sound like you're in the room and it's like being plugged in directly is a little bit too clean, that's fine. It's all creative decisions. But if you're having to use something that's built into your camera, you have to balance out the pros and cons of having the camera far enough away to capture the scene versus close enough for the microphone to capture your audio. So, if you have a big, big band and you're recording with your phone and you have to get your phone really far away to capture everyone on the screen, well, now your microphone's too far away. So you kind of have to split that difference. And one way to split that difference is to use multiple microphones or even multiple phones to record your clip. You can have, just if you have an extra iPhone, the 2 models ago, or if you have a friend there who's recording with you, set one up to record the video and have it be nicely framed far away, and then just kind of sneak one in next to you to record the audio. And nearly every video editing software will let you take the audio from one and lay it over the other, so you can really get the best of both of those capturing devices. So room tone. We kind of touched on this a little bit before, but room tone is the sound, the ambient sound of a silent room. Now, if you're in a bare room like the one in the picture here, you could probably still hear the hum of electricity in other rooms, the kind of rumble of the wind hitting the building, the traffic, on the street below. So even if you think it's silent, there's still sound going on. Now, this is why having that extra pad of extra footage, a couple seconds of silence before you start, this is also, this also helps for this too. So a lot of audio software will allow you to notch out certain frequencies. So if you capture this room tone on its own, you'll be able to notch out that room tone from the rest of your performance. Okay, syncing audio. It's one of the more difficult parts to overcome when you're starting out making music performance videos. And it's especially important now, considering that a lot of people are working remotely and are combining their footage together in post-production and editing. So you really want to set yourself up for success by making it very easy to sync your sound to your video and sync your sound to your bandmates' audios and video. To make it easy on yourself, you want to have both audio and visual markers. Now, you could see that little clapboard there on the bottom, like you see on a film shoot. That serves a very specific purpose. When you have it and you take the little, oh, hang on. I have one. So if you go and you have it open, and then you can see how the stripes make it easy to see that it's far apart, and then you can match the second, like the moment that the 2 pieces come together with that kind of clack sound in your audio. You'll see a peak in the waveform. So that's really, really helpful for making sure that your video is aligned with your audio, so that, you don't start to hear somebody sing and then 2 seconds later their mouth starts to move. If you don't have a little clapboard, all you have to do is just clap your hands. It's the same concept. You just have someone, perhaps the person who's performing, stand there, give a little countdown of like 3, 2, 1, And then you can match the moment that you hear the clap with when you see the hands come together. So even if you're recording audio like directly from your instrument into an interface or computer, you really should leave audio on your video track. This is going to help syncing a lot. You know, some software can actually look at the waveform, you know, of your shitty video camera's audio track and your really, really nice captured audio, you know, direct, you know, plugged in audio, and it'll see, you know, okay, so this waveform is peaking here and it's down here, and then it will align it for you. Or if you don't have software that will let you do that, you could still do it visually. So even if one recording is kind of shitty and one recording is good, it'll still generally have the same waveforms, which will let you match. But if you're, you know, not even looking at a waveform and you're just trying to match the visual to the sound that you have to have, how do I say, like, you know, if you're plugged in directly to your interface and computer and you've got your guitar and you're strumming along, well, on an electric guitar, you hear almost nothing in the video track. Now, that's trying to, so when you have the audio separate and you've got it all cleaned up and produced and nice, and you want to lay it back over, well, now you have no point of reference for where it goes. So that's why having the markers is really important, and having audio still on the video track is important. So even if you're playing, you know, you're pantomiming to playback, like you have the nicely produced audio that you recorded earlier, and you're just kind of trying to capture the video part of it, and you're like doing like an old music video, and you're like kind of, you know, pantomiming to the song, well, have it just playing on speakers. Don't have it in headphones, because if it's in the headphones, the camera's not capturing it. It won't let you have a point of reference for realigning it. So if you have like a very nice audio track and a perfectly silent video track, it's going to make your life a little bit more difficult. All right, so as we start to wrap up here, this is some stuff that's specific to Concord Couch Concerts. We ask that you do not put transitions in your clips. So don't fade in, don't fade out to black. If you have multiple songs and you're doing transitions from one song to another, that's fine. But when we're putting together all these different videos, you know, we want to make it look consistent. So we want to use the same transitions as we move from, you know, band to band. So just leave all that extra time, all that padding time, all that extra footage, leave it at the front, leave it at the back. We'll trim it out for you. Don't worry about it. It just makes it a lot easier for us. Also, we ask that you don't put any titles or graphics on your video. Again, this is because we have a very consistent look that we're going for. We have a template for, you know, the band's, you know, name and contact information and tip jar information. We have our little logo. So if you add your own titles, there's a chance that you might put it in the wrong place, and then it might interfere with our titles. You know, so if you, for Concord Couch Concerts, if you want a specific graphic that's above and beyond, you know, the standard, you know, performer name and social media contacts, just let me know. Get in contact with me, let me know. You know, for some folks, we've had them give us their album art, and they say, you know, hey, we want the album art at the end. You know, we have a new album coming out, we want to promote it. Just put the album art for 5 seconds at the end of my clip. And I go, can do, that's fine. And finally, you know, again, talking about split screens, we do have more split screens than we might have had pre-pandemic. So, you know, folks are experimenting with that. But for Concord Couch Concerts, we kind of want to keep it simple. We kind of want to make it look like it's a live-ish video. We have to consider the fact that people might be watching on their phones or very, very small screens. So really, really ornate frames, you know, windows, when you're Brady bunching yourselves, that could eat up too much room. So keep it on the simpler side, and that way we could see more of your beautiful faces. And that's it. So now Dave is going to help me open this up for questions. I'm not really sure how you want to do this, Dave.
Well, I was monitoring Facebook. I didn't see any questions pop up in there. Lots of appreciation, though. Anyone in the Zoom, feel free to unmute yourself and join us here.
Jesse, unmute yourself.
Hello. I was wondering if you might be able to give any pros and cons for smart bulbs. I don't know if...
Oh, like the Philips?
Yeah, sort of. So like, for instance, I'm using Wise bulbs. And from your phone, you can turn them on and off, control the color temperature and the brightness. You can do all this from your phone or Alexa or whatever. You can get like a 4-pack of them for like, you know, $35, and that's probably a lot cheaper than a, you know, whole lighting rig. Are there any like particular drawbacks to that?
Depends. So back in the olden days, or well, I mean, even still now, professional lights would be changed by having gels put over them. These are like, you know, kind of cellophane-like material that might have different colors, and they're clipped to the front of the light, so the light coming through it is that color. Now, those smart bulbs mean that you can change it to any color you want really easily without having to fuss with all these different pieces of equipment. So that's pretty cool. If you have those in lamps or in your overhead lights in your house, I don't see a problem with it. Maybe just make sure, if you can, that, you know, unless you're going for a multicolored light situation, if you're trying to make it consistent, then try and match them as best you can. But not all more prosumer or pro lights will just take like a incandescent that you can, or LED that you can get at Target. So just keep that in mind, that if you buy like a nice ring light, it's got the light in it, and you're not going to be able to swap it out. But if you want to use it in just like normal lamps, your overhead lighting, go for it.
Hey, Simone, real quick, if you can kill the screen share.
Yeah.
Just to make it a little more engaging for those of us that, or those that are watching from Facebook.
That did not work. Here we go.
There we go. Cool. What do you suggest? You talked a little bit about, I'm totally guilty of anytime, whether I'm doing a live stream or something for Concord Couch Concerts, I do the dark thing. I go way dark, and I'm using my shit phone too. So it's not particularly skilled at capturing the low light that I have targeted on myself. What would you suggest for like when you have a very small room to be working in, and you do want that artistic dark thing going on? Is there a particular kind of a light to focus on, and where to focus it on yourself, to still capture the darkness of the room and be well illuminated?
Yeah, well, I think you should default to the 3-point lighting setup. So that's the one where you have the key in front of your face, the fill in the back. But you can just set them a little bit lower. And again, it goes like the key should be the brightest, the fill should be the next brightest, and the back should be the softest. So if you want it to still be dark, you want to have darkness behind you, then you just really kind of tamp down on your backlight. But you should still have some, you know what I'm saying? And again, this is stuff that can also be, changed in post. Like you can kind of draw down shadows or the overall exposure in most video software. So we just want to make sure you can be seeing clearly. It's really going to depend on a lot of different things, like what lights you have, what camera you have. So I would just do test runs until you find something that you're happy with.
Cool. Is there any freeware, any software that you recommend people use for basic video editing that without, you know, investing deeply in something that might be too much of a bite for them to swallow?
I am unfortunately not a very good source for this because I have been spoiled and been using Final Cut and Adobe Premiere for years. I think the last free with computer software I used was iMovie when I had a purple iMac in college. So there are plenty of, you know, just by Googling, you know, free audio editing or video editing software, they'll come up with lots of lists, you know, for different platforms, Mac or PC. I use a Mac. Final Cut is Mac only. Premiere can go on both. But, you know, there's also, I really hate that Adobe moved to a subscription model, but it does allow you to play with it for, I think, like 5 to 7 days. So you can always check those out. But there are options. Unfortunately, I'm not that familiar with them.
I didn't realize Final Cut was Apple exclusive, but I guess that makes sense. So Premiere is
question about sound. I earlier on actually last year when that whole pandemic started up, I got a Shure iPhone mic. I think it wasn't an M80, but something like that. That's been pretty adequate for the iPhone. But I've resuscitated my my DSLR, and I'm looking to start doing some, you know, get better quality with that for sure. Any recommendations in terms of DSLR mics?
Yeah, there is a Rode little shotgun mic that I've been eyeing myself. They have, you know, different price points. I think this one's like $80. It's got a 3.5 millimeter jack that will be sufficient for most DSLRs. Not all DSLRs will even have a mic jack, which is a problem. My DSLR, my older DSLR, does not have one, which sucks. So that necessitates an entirely different audio capturing setup. Yeah, I've been looking at that Rode. I'll try and find a link that I can.
I pulled one up on Sweetwater just now. It's like at Sweetwater, it's $99. It just mounts on the hot shoe.
Yeah.
And it's a little hot shoe. It's got a little isolating cradle and everything. So that looks like it might be a good way to go.
Yeah, that's the one that's on my wish list.
Cool. The next thing that I'm terrified about is editing, because that's something I've never done yet. So hopefully that's a future classroom session that y'all could put together, because I'm in awe of how well some of the acts on CCC have put together these awesome videos, and yeah, I'm jealous.
Yeah. That is, I knew I couldn't cram editing into this one, but that's something I'm definitely interested in putting together for y'all. But as Dave kind of pointed out, I am not as familiar with the current freeware that's out there, which I think more people will be using. So I have to kind of re-educate myself so that I don't totally blast you with all these crazy details from Final Cut or whatever.
Got it.
We do have some questions both on Zoom and on Facebook. I can start going through them, but I think I saw Jesse with his hand up. You're muted.
I just wanted to add a word about shotgun mics, just something to consider, keep in mind. So I know the ones you're talking about, they mount onto the top of the cameras, right?
Yeah.
So with shotgun mics, just be mindful that shotgun mics are very directional, and they're pretty much designed to aim straight at the person in front of the camera. So if you have your camera, you know, filming the whole band, a shotgun mic might not capture everything that's off to the sides of the camera very well. So that's something to keep in mind. That's all.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, in the chat we have someone is asking, seems like a general question, less AV, but I'll go ahead and answer it pretty quickly. The person says, just wanted to say thanks, very helpful. Was all the Concert Couch series live feed to the audience, or was it streamed to a central control for edit and broadcast? Nothing we've done so far has been live. There was an effort in the very beginning to try to maintain as much illusion of live as possible without being deceitful. And that's what we asked people to shoot at night for that reason. And we're continuing with asking folks to kind of do that. I mean, you don't have to get all bullshitty and start talking to the camera like, you know, addressing your mother watching or anything like that. But we do try to give the feel of Friday night because we are all together watching it. It is a communal thing, and we want to keep that communal thing. And you have this 3 p.m., you know, backyard shot. It kind of just upsets that feeling a little bit. So while we're not trying to be deceitful, it's all shot ahead of time, and it's all, you know, we write in the segues and piece it all together. There's a lot of conversation that goes into each episode and a lot of decision making that we wouldn't be able to pull off live with the same level of success. But we are looking at some live options that Tom can talk about in the future about what's capable for us as far as like live hosting and then cutting to some of this footage. And maybe even down the road featuring like a longer set by a live band, say from the Red Room or somewhere here in Concord, and doing that. But right now we're just going to continue churning with a very similar format than we did last season.
Yeah.
It's cool that you were fooled, though. I like that. He said, wow, that I was fooled.
Just to get into some of the process of how Couch Concerts is put together, you know, we ask that videos be turned in, what, Dave, like a week-ish ahead of time?
Yeah, it was 10 days, but we're going up to a month so that we can control content a little better.
Yeah. So the bands they go to their separate homes, they go to their separate corners, they record themselves, they edit their actual clip. And so what I receive is just one solid video clip. I gather them all up from everybody. The Couch Concerts hosts will shoot their segues, send those to me as well. I go through and Dave determines the order. And so I'm just assembling. I'm just like, okay, so this band goes here, and then their segue goes behind them, and then there's this band is next. I do some light editing of the actual clips themselves. Like I might, you know, crop the frame a little bit, adjust the exposure, adjust the color, you know, add some compression to the audio if it's not very, if it's hard to hear.
Nothing that compromises the art.
Yeah. Like I'm always really wary of doing that. And as a matter of fact, I usually will just do that for when someone's just speaking, like, hey, we're so-and-so, we're going to show you some new songs, let's go. And then the music starts. Well, the speaking tends to be harder to hear than the music. So the speaking might need to be adjusted a little bit. Then transitions are put in, you know, we fade to black between each different band to kind of, you know, different transitions, different cuts really speak to different things. Something like a fade to black really emphasizes this is the end of this segment, while something like a cross dissolve, where they're sort of meshed over each other, kind of implies something is continuous, but that time has elapsed. Then we put in titles, you know, so the band name, the tip jar info, the social media info, website info. And that's pretty much the whole of it. Then it gets exported into two separate halves. You know, there's an intermission in the middle. That's where the split is.
The Bon Jovi screen. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's really mostly just so that the file sizes remain manageable, because we're having to upload and share all these different videos with each other. We don't want it to get too unwieldy and take, you know, 10 hours to upload. And that's what you end up seeing on Facebook.
Okay, one question we saw was, I believe, oh, we got Brian here. Go for it, Brian. You're muted.
Oh, hey there. I just wanted to point this out there about asking about a DSLR mic. This is for a Sony camera, and it fits in the hot shoe. And I got this with a Sony camera that I got like 5 years ago, and it's worked on all subsequent Sony cameras that I bought. and it's great. It has these two little condenser mics, and if you leave it like this, it works kind of like a shotgun, and then you can just flip these out, and
Oh, that's
then you
cool.
get more of a wide pattern, and it picks up. It has a very wide frequency range. And I'm a bass player, and I know this here's my bass, whereas all the mics that are built into these devices have a hard time hearing the bass. This is one of the few things that I found that's super convenient, that works almost as well as a direct line. And
That
it
picks
comes with
up
a little,
your upright pretty well, the
yeah,
acoustic.
yeah. I mean, this thing will go down to 20 hertz. So it's a 20 to 20K or 20 to 15K, I think. And it sounds pretty good. It has a little windscreen you could put on there. But anyhow, if you find this for your camera, something that's wide, and that'll work very well with a band. And usually what I do when I'm doing multicam shoots is I'll put this on the main camera, and so that I get a really good high quality feed that I'll use. And then the side cameras, I'll just use their built-in mics to sync up as the audio, as Simone pointed out.
Exactly.
But one question that I have, which is kind of separate. I mean, I'm curious to know. I've done some live streaming on my own, and sometimes I have adequate bandwidth, and I have feeding a really like a 720p or higher to Facebook, and it'll just hang out at 360 on Facebook, the stream. And I'm wondering if there's anything you can mention about that, because I know that Concord Couch Concerts is consistently broadcasting in 720p. What can you say anything about that? Why that might be?
Unfortunately, that's more of a Tom question. So Tom is the one who actually does the live stream. I think he uses OBS software to live stream. It's something I kind of need to brush up on myself. So I'm kind of hoping that Tom will have one of these about live streaming.
Possibly, part of the answer could be that it's our belief. We tried it, but the first episode was huge in size. We had a different editor at the time, and we're just like, well, let's just make it as good as it is, knowing that Facebook is going to compress it in real time. And we, for whatever reason, through some tests and stuff, we kind of arrived at it looks like they're kind of compressing things to around that area anyway. And if we keep it within that frame, it's less potential live complications. Because I mean, the live stream is, us playing a video that we made, but doing that through OBS, there's all kinds of different ways you could do, but we chose that just to be consistent with what we think Facebook's doing. And I'm kind of talking out the back door on this one. So yeah, it's a Tom question.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate this is a good session. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Aaliyah asked, it's a little bit of a vague question, but she wanted to know if you had any quick fixes for shadows, knowing that you addressed it in earlier, but just is there like a quick fix if you're just having some trouble with shadows other than applying light, I suppose?
So I'm going to borrow a term from a different part of videography. What do you do if you can't zoom in any further on your camera? You have to do a foot zoom, which means fucking walk and get closer. So if you can't control the shadows by, adding more light, then move. You can move, you can add more shadows, add more light to the fill. Make sure that nothing is in front of your light sources. So if there's a plant in front of your window, just move the plant. There's a lot of things you could do.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with not relying on any station lighting. Like, so if you're shooting indoors, your living room, your office, whatever, and you have like recessed ceiling lights and that's what you're using, you need to probably invest in bringing in some new lamps. Like you literally said in there, like bring in whatever lamps you have to work with, but some things that you can manipulate. You can't really manipulate the house lights all the time, aside from dimming here and there. But when it comes to shadows, that's, it could be the chandelier,
Yeah.
There was a question here from Marta of Cat Van Morgan asking, she'd like a little more information about aspect ratios. What's the best one to use generally? And I'm assuming when she means generally, like, whether it's Concord Couch Concerts or you're just submitting it or you're live streaming or whatever the case, what is your go-to aspect ratio if you had to pick one?
Yeah, so for general purpose, I would do a widescreen of a 16:9, you know, take your phone and go like this. It's usually good enough. There's only a few platforms that have, you know, very specific odd aspect ratios, like, you know, Instagram with a square, or uh, Instagram Live, or TikTok with the horizontal. I remember when Quibi came out, that platform that lasted all of 3 months. Their whole thing was that you could watch the videos in either portrait or landscape, because it was shot in such a way that there was enough room in the frame to accommodate for both. Um, but you know, so leave yourself a little bit of extra room if you think you might be doing something like that, if you might need it on a different platform. But widescreen 16:9, you know, is usually probably your best bet.
And Leah has a question here, AK Jamison, inquiring about, she uses Premiere and she wants to know what's the main, since you have experience with both the Final Cut and Premiere, what is, you know, pros and cons, or, you know, I know that could be a loaded question, but basically what is, what can you do with Final Cut that you can't do with Premiere, if that's the one that you moved on to?
Honestly, you can do the same with both. I was originally trained on Final Cut in school and in personal projects. I use Premiere for work, because I work for a local television station. I can't really find anything that you can do on one but not the other. Um, I personally prefer Final Cut just because it's what I'm the most familiar with, and because I'm a lifelong Mac user. So I'm really comfortable with the interface, and have been with it since, oh my God, I've been using Premiere since like 2000, or I've been using Final Cut since like 2003, which I just realized how long ago that was. Um, I guess one thing that's cool about Premiere over Final Cut is how it plays nicely with other Adobe software. Like I have used After Effects to do more intense titles and graphics, and those just play really well together. You know, there's no reason why you can't, you know, edit your video in Final Cut and then take it into something like After Effects, but you just have more flexibility if you're using that same suite. So, you know, honestly, it's just personal preference.
Are you comfortable with any hardware questions in terms of, are there particular products that are, you know, everyone's snatching up new equipment right now, and not everyone's feeling really well informed on what they're picking up. I realize this could be an entire other
Yeah.
program that we could do here. But real quick, is there any quick mentions for either, you know, non-break the bank cameras or non-break the bank microphones, or two-in-ones, specific to the kind of stuff that we do? Because I know that it varies there too, right? You got live streaming, this and that.
Yeah. Honestly, most phones are fine. Unless you're trying to get a real cinematic, real fancy look, your phone is probably sufficient. I have a iPhone 11 Pro that works really well. It's better than my old DSLR. It's better than this camcorder that we have lying around. Um, there are some lower end DSLRs, like I like Canons. My DSLR is a Canon Rebel something or other, and I like those, and those are vastly different price points. The one thing I would warn is something that I kind of mentioned earlier, is that the lower end or older DSLRs might not have a mic input. So that would be another expense to consider, that if you get a cheaper camera, you might have to buy audio equipment anyway. I'm personally very excited because I just bought a Canon XC10, and it arrived literally yesterday. So I haven't had total time to play with it, but that's a camera that I chose because it's 4K, and it can kind of split the difference between documentary or news style footage with cinematic footage. A cinema camera is very, very expensive. So this was kind of like the closest I could get without totally going insane with my poor bank account.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think that addresses all the questions that we currently have. Does anyone have anything you want to add or ask?
I see one more. What file type do you need? We prefer .mp4 or .mov, but if you have a different file type, I could still probably use it. Just warn me, because I can convert anything into something that I can use. It's just saves time if it comes to me in an MP4 MOV.
And remember, Simone's doing this work for Concord Couch Concerts for free. So let's not ask her to do extra work if we don't have to.
I just want to say thank you all. It's Simone, this has been really helpful. Good refresher on some of the stuff that I remembered from long ago. And Dave, thanks for putting it together. And
it was all Simone. All I did was a live stream.
Right on, y'all.
Well, I mean, you know, Concord Couch Concerts has been an outlet for me and my hobby of playing the bass, and Javier of his way more advanced musical abilities. So I'm just really happy to have a place to showcase that and get to know new folks. I'm new to Concord. I just moved in February, and then we immediately shut down, so I don't know a ton of people here. But through this project, I've gotten to know a lot of really cool people, and you know, find new bands and have something to look forward to when there's a new show coming up. So, you know, I'm very happy to be a part of this.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. This is it. The community end of it. It almost sounds cliche, right? To just constantly be patting ourselves on the back for like how we're able to do stuff as a community and how we are organized musicians and music enthusiasts. But it freaking matters. Like things like this is a turning of another page of this effort. You know, it's not just about entertaining each other. You know, it's you know, performance is great. And it's cool that we're able to, you know, do something in that way. But things like this is where it becomes really kind of powerful, where we're, you know, truly tapping into the wealth that we have of information and knowledge. So I really hope we can do more of these and it doesn't kind of dead end here. That it seems like we kind of unearthed a few different topics that we can talk about. Some of them with you leading again, Simone, and kind of doing something like this, where we kind of get a little more into the weeds with some aspects of some of the stuff that you touched upon. And we talked about some setting up a DAW with the audio guys and getting some, you know, a panel of some informed audio folks and going down that road. We can do a live stream one, talk about OBS, the ins and outs of that. Probably never going to really get too specific in terms of products and, you know, product placement kind of stuff isn't really anything that we're interested in. So, but we can just talk, you know, have users from this community talk about what works for them and why. And then it's just, you know, helps us all get better at what we're doing. So thank you all for participating. This has been really cool. I look forward to the next one.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye. Thank you for coming.
Bye.